Welcome back. 12th episode of the Fifth Quarter Collective. Please like, subscribe, and share. Guys, how we doing?
Great. Fantastic.
Oh, it worked that
Oh,
time.
yes.
Sweet.
That's what I wanted to do.
Now we're doing amazing now that we got that to work.
We got graphics. We're double digit episodes. We're a week away from football. What more could we ask for?
Yeah.
That graphic cost us $10,000, but it's worth it.
Everybody likes fireworks. It's all good.
Shout out to our YouTube channel. Go see us there.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And today, very exciting pickup league back from the hamstring injury. We played the worst team in the league beforehand. I literally heard two of the players saying, if we don't lose by 70, we can chalk it up as a win. And then the other guy responded, yeah, I didn't eat a heavy dinner before this game, so I'm feeling much better. And they looked about as heavy as you're imagining, probably heavier. And it was a piece of cake, but dropped 25, 7 boards, 5 assists. Nobody's counting, but good little tune-up game before playoff start. Um,
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
Was it Spice Adams with that one meme where he's just chalking up?
yeah. The sad thing is that guy has a better form than quite a few of the guys that we played against. Yeah,
That's so
wasn't
bad.
great. Wasn't great, but no, excited. Yeah, like you're saying, no more weekends now without any football. I can't wait. I know you all are very excited too. And today we'll break down some Big Ten, SEC previews, kind of run through some thoughts there. Um, Anything you guys want to kick off with beforehand, though? Coleman, I know you and I were having a bit of a debate earlier.
Yeah, so I had called Jake this morning, as you guys know, huge Oriole fan. The Orioles blew a 4-3, or they blew a 3-3 tie in the bottom of the ninth last night. They gave up a solo home run to Francisco Alvarez of the Mets, and they lost 4-3. But they came back and won tonight at the time of filming, 9-5, so that's big. Going for the rubber match tomorrow. But I had called Jake, and then he said to me, "What have the Orioles done since the new ownership?" So you could go be an owner, and then you would run the team much better. I said, "No, I disagree. I trust in Mike Elias, the team's GM, but they haven't made a big free agent signing. They've taken on salaries, which I've never seen the Orioles do in my lifetime. So that was big. We're taking baby steps. But one person they did re-sign is their play-by-play guy, Kevin Brown. I am a huge Kevin Brown fan, as is Luke.
Love 'em.
We both love KB. We love them all. We love Ben McDonough. We love Jim Palmer, Jeff Arnold, Melanie Newman. So we love them all. But KB especially, we really appreciate. Big Blink 182 fan. And the whole point of the conversation, he's like, who cares about play-by-play guys? And I said that's an absurd take. I think play-by-play guys are the most important aspect of the fan experience while watching at home. And he's like, I don't care. Like, who cares about the play-by-play guy? He's like, I watch the game. I don't really care what they say. It's a super easy job. All it is, hey, goodbye home run, the 3-2, the 2-0. Nice play, short, over to first. There you go, end of the inning. And it's not that easy. So we got into this heated discussion of how important is the play-by-play man in sports. So I wanted to open the floor for you guys and get your thoughts before I share mine and go and from there.
I think we have to hear Jake's.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective here, I just think when you're talking about your organization, you're like, what we just did? What we just splashed around? We just signed one of our commentators. I think that's a bad sign for where the
No, I don't.
organization might be
I
at.
don't think it's a bad sign. I think it truly means they care about the fan experience.
Potentially. Um, I I just I don't know if it should be a focal point. Um, but then again, maybe I'm underplaying how important that is for the fan experience there. Um,
And you had made the comparison to Romo of like, oh, I really like Romo. But Romo does what baseball announcers have been doing for years. I think the play-by-play, the longer the season, the more important it is to have a good play-by-play person. Because you can go on with football 4 hours every week and you can watch the game. There's so much action. They don't need the asides. They don't need the funny moments or the off-track commentary. You get to 82 basketball games. Comes to mind Pete Prenica, Brevin Knight from the Memphis Grizzlies. They have an excellent broadcast. There are some teams on League Pass who I will not watch solely because of their commentary team. Same thing with baseball. It's even worse. Double the games, 162. You play 162 games from April until the end of September. I'm not watching that game on mute every single time. You live for the asides. You live for the inside jokes. You live for them. Hey, bottom of the sixth. It's one out. Man on first. 2-2 count. You live for the stories that Jim Palmer is telling about his time with the Orioles in the 60s. You live for what Kevin Brown did with the softball. You live for whatever they're talking about, whatever's going on in the world. That's the stuff you miss, and that's the stuff you kind of need to make the game more interesting at home.
100%. I think it is very sports specific, like football, like you said. Like all those games that are being played, they're all going to be on national television. So you're going to have your Greg McElroy's or your Dave Pash or whoever
And those are
talking college
great
football.
play-by-play guys.
And yeah, they're
But you
fantastic.
have some, like, not to name names, but I will, because it's okay. It's our podcast. Beth Mowens comes to mind. Super nice lady, I'm sure. Doing the 11 o'clock ESPN2 Iowa at Northwestern. You're still watching that game regardless if she's calling the game or not. And now she's doing the NFL. You will still watch that NFL game regardless if she's doing it. But if there's a bad play-by-play guy, you're not watching that team for 162 games. You're going to flip on another team's broadcast and watch your team via another team's broadcast just solely because of the play-by-play, I think.
Percent. I think going back to the Grizzlies too, like I'd much rather watch I'm glad they don't, this is the one good thing of that being a small market team and not getting a ton of national TV coverage because I honestly don't really care. Like Stan Van Gundy's not going to give me, all the goods that I want. I think these local broadcasters, they have boots on ground, they got all the inside. So and then if you keep watching the same team over and over again on national TV, they just rotate the same like graphics and stats. And honestly, that just kind of grinds my gears, but that's not getting over there. That's a whole nother discussion.
I think you guys are all right. Like Jake stating as the new owner, the biggest thing is like, oh, we signed our commentator. It's not like the first thing that should be like jumping off the page.
No, but that's not the first thing that has happened.
No, but I agree with you about it does matter who's commentating the game because for college football, for example, if you get like a bad person or even NBA, like NBA, I feel like it's more known because, in my opinion, this is a little different segue, but like the DJs playing during the game, like just ruin the game sometimes. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
horrendous. Like I want to hear a sneaker squeak. I want to hear people cursing at each other. Like, well, how basketball actually is played. Now, like what you said, if Herb Street's announcing something, I'm like dialed in. Like it's a big time game rather than some guy who's just getting his first shot. So I do think it matters. Obviously, the big games you're gonna have Herb Street, who's my personal favorite. I think he's great. Like Romo, very interesting to listen to just because of how good he is. I think you're both right though. I think you're kind of arguing like different points, and yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I think you're both correct. It's a big deal, especially for the fan experience, because most people aren't as up to date as we are with sports or as in depth.
You're not going to all 162.
Right.
I think the timing of the post. I mean, there's nothing going on right now, so like, let's just post something. So I mean, yeah, they probably were in the works the contract with KB for a while, but I don't know. We're kind of in the. I mean, we're
I wouldn't
approaching
call it the
the
biggest thing that the organization has done since the new ownership took over. I wouldn't say that it's even close, but I think it's a big one for the fans. I think when you take on money, if you're the Baltimore Orioles for the first time in I don't know how long, you're taking on Eloy Jimenez's contract. You're trading away stud prospects for pitchers under multiple year controls. I think that's a big deal for an organization, a small market organization like ours, a team that's not really accustomed to winning. I think those are huge strides that never happened under the former ownership of that dirtbag John Angelos.
How do you really feel?
Yeah, don't hold back.
A lot. He's more than a dirtbag. But neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I just, when we look back at the Orioles, like how sad are you going to be when Connor Norby is an all-star, Trevor Rogers sucks,
Trevor Rogers does suck.
and like Adley's on a different team, Gunner's on a different team, Jackson's somewhere else, and then you guys are just like rebuilding.
No, I truly believe the owners care about the new owner. So, for example, the new owners, it's a big conglomerate of owners, but it's really two main guys. David Rubenstein, who has his own show on Bloomberg, the David Rubenstein Show. Recommend it. Watch it the other day. Michael Arangetti, one of the other Oriole owners. And then there's like a big ownership group of like guys like Grant Hill and stuff like that. So they recently bought the Orioles the day before the opening day from this dirtbag, John Angelos, whose dad used to own the team. Peter Angelos. Peter Angelos was on his way out. He had medical conditions where he couldn't run the team anymore. He was really old. So his son and the rest of his family ran the team. They were horrendous owners, never wanted to pay anything, super cheap, never did anything in free agency, always wanted to cut costs at the expense of the team and the fans. And then the new owners picked up the new team. So they still haven't had a full season yet. They have yet to extend any of the young stars, but however, they're in talks with extending guys like Adley Rutschman, Gunner, whose contracts aren't up yet, but they're going to be building blocks and the cement rocks of our organization for years to come. Now with John Angelos as the owner, all those players are gone. My team sucks. Enjoy it while it lasts. But a guy like Rubenstein, who I want to say is like top 5 richest owner in baseball, the man owns the Magna Carta. He owns one of 3 copies of the Magna Carta. History buffs from England. I think it was like the English version of the Constitution. So there's only a few in existence. He owns one of them. So that's the background for this and the backstory behind Jake's absurd comments about the Orioles selling everyone.
Hey, when Adley and all the guys are gone, at least you'll have KB.
And the fans will still be happy. Years went by of the great Gary Thorne, who was the Orioles play-by-play announcer for the longest time, and everybody loved him. And then we had a transition period of guys like Scott Garceau, Brett Hollander, Jeff Arnold, guys who were good, they're all right, local favorites. But then you get a big guy like KB, and you extend him for a long time. That's huge for your organization. That's huge for your fans. It's huge for the people who are out of market who can't go to the games as well. Who try to watch all 162. That's all.
I mean, my favorite's Ben McDonald. I love KB too, but Ben McDonald, that guy's the funniest man on earth.
Yeah.
And his flat top, dude. I always joke with Coleman. I'm like, you can definitely land a helicopter on that thing.
You could. And his son's flat top, Jace. Shout out LSU units.
He's a good follow on the on social. So give
And
a
Nicole
Ben McDonald,
realtor,
yeah,
Baton Rouge. Go follow her too.
the wifey.
Yeah, wifey. We're a pro McDonald podcast here. We're a pro McDonald family podcast.
We might have to add him on here.
Yeah, we will.
We'll get
Jace, Nicole, and Ben. We love you guys. Ben's got a daughter too. We love her too. She's not that big on the social media.
Let's get the whole family in here.
Yeah. Shout out, guys. Go Wolves.
Anyway,
shout out Johnny Davis. Amazing. I think we'll have to make an entire Orioles segment out of that to corner that market. I think that'll be perfect.
We could dive into a ton of Orioles content. Craig Kimbrell tonight. Holy shit.
Just teeing him up.
He actually got 2 people out, and since July 7th he didn't allow a base runner tonight. This was the first good outing since July 7th.
Just wait till Eloy injures his pectoral in warm-ups or something.
But I will say this, we lost a huge pitcher tonight, Zach Eflin, a guy we traded at the trade deadline, on the DL for 15 days, right shoulder inflammation. If you look at our DL list of pitchers and relievers, you would be that's an all-star organization. That's a team that would literally make the playoffs of guys on our fucking DL.
Well,
carry on now. Orioles segment over.
At least you get some happiness. That's all.
Yeah, I mean we're first in the AL East. I think we're first in the AL still. I don't know how the Guardians-Yankees game ended, so we're scoreboard watching. At the time of filming, it's over, but I just haven't checked the score.
One of these weeks, we'll have Coleman do a live play-by-play during the game, so you can check out.
Guardians up 9-3. Huge for the Orioles, huge for the organization, huge for the AL East.
Well, I know everybody is really gearing up for our baseball breakdown, but I think we might have to segue into SEC and Big Ten.
Yeah, that more important topic. Not saying August baseball is important, but there's people are looking forward to other things.
Where do you guys want to start? How do you guys want to kick this off and break it down? Just
Start with the best, or do we save the best for last? Which I think is how we should do it. We'll start Big Ten first, and then
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. All right. Who wants to take it away?
yeah, I guess just you guys want to do team breakdowns. You want to do general overviews, general thoughts.
We could do like who's overrated, who's underrated, and then who's properly rated, maybe.
I love that.
Yeah, I like that. When we're looking at the Big Ten, I'll kick us off here. I was just kind of going through looking at some of the schedules earlier today. Um, one of the teams that and again, this you have different preseason rankings and projections and things like that. So take that with a grain of salt. But I mean, one team I really am liking, and I think that they have a chance to win 8 games this year is Nebraska. Looking at 5-star freshman, what's his face? Dylan Raiola. Quite funny if you haven't seen it already. Go on Twitter, look at how much he looks and walks and like plays like Patrick Mahomes. Like at first I was like, oh, this is probably nothing. It's pretty damn similar, and I'm not saying he's going to be that level or anything like that, but what I think in Nebraska, you get a great quarterback there. Obviously, biggest piece that can change an entire organization. So don't sleep on them at all. So I think 8 or 9 wins this season. I don't think they're projected low enough for them to be underrated. So maybe I'll say properly rated. I think that might make sense.
I really like what they did in Nebraska. I think it's a year too soon. Historically, Matt Rule has done really well in his third year at each program, from Temple to Baylor. Carolina Panthers, we're not going to count. NFL, different ballgame. But historically, he took over horrendous teams and had a below average first year, whether it's 3 wins, 4 wins. I think what did Nebraska go 4-8 last year, 5-7. Historically, in his second year, it's around 6-6, 7-5. Year three, especially with Raiola as a sophomore, then in another year, I think then that's a 9-10 win team, depending on the schedule.
Mhm.
Right now, I
Wow.
think it's a little too soon to say, hey, we're a 9-10 win team, especially in the Big Ten, which I think has gotten better with the added depth. And I even think the older Big Ten teams are getting a little bit better. It's not going to be such a weak middle of the conference anymore. I think it's strengthened. It's gotten a lot more competitive. It's gotten a lot better. So I think 6-7 wins right now, which is a good season for Nebraska. I mean, when was the last time they finished something like that? When was the last time there was like hype? I mean, there's always hype around the program, but like actual results to back up that hype.
Not since Will Compton, maybe. I don't know.
Well, a perfect segue for my team. So no free shout out busting with the boys today was watching their predictions for Ohio State. Somebody tweeted they think Ohio State won't let up a TD the first 5 weeks. And they have such a cupcake schedule if you look at it compared to
Yeah, they
Michigan's.
do.
Yeah, they just have a cakewalk. They have a complete cakewalk. Michigan's actually putting it out on the line, trying to get it done. And I think my hot take for the Big Ten is that Michigan will run the Big Ten again. I think that's my hot take.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do, because I know people are like, "Oh, Harbaugh's out, McCarthy's out," but I mean, I believe they hired their DC, so he's already in house. Like they already kind of have like the tradition set, and I don't think they're going to be that far off from where people think. Like Ohio State obviously has like the biggest NIL, they're paying all these people. They got Will blanking on his last name, Howard
Howard.
from Kansas State. I don't think he really moves the needle that much compared to McCord. I thought really McCord had like few bad possessions, we'll say, against Michigan, and they were just dogging on him ever since. I thought he was a good QB, and now he's at Syracuse. So we're gonna see how that if it flips anything. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins coming from Ole Miss, it's supposed to be the big hype, but he'll be good. But I don't think he's gonna be people in the past we've seen there like J.K. Dobbins. I don't think he's gonna be that level of effect. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I don't know about Will Howard. I feel like McCord definitely had the benefit of having Marvin Harrison Jr. for sure. I mean, there was definitely other weapons other than him, obviously, but uh, who knows, honestly. I think a sleeper team is the Iowa Hawkeyes. They might, if they can get any ounce, any heartbeat on their offense going, like they also have a cakewalk schedule. They could easily be 9-win team. I mean, they the two hard games they play, in my opinion, well, three, I guess, if I'm looking at it, is Iowa State, Ohio State, and Washington. And if they can get one of those wins, then they're a 10-win team and potentially a playoff team. I don't know. I don't know how that'll work, but I think the Iowa Hawkeyes might be in the running here. But
Luke,
yeah, well, I mean, Ohio State. Go
I
ahead.
absolutely love that take. That has been, I think, my favorite take you've had on this show.
You mean I wanted to
It's
go last week.
awesome. That's exactly what I was going to say. The schedule is a literal cakewalk. I think anything under 10-2 for Iowa should be a failure of a season
Disappointment,
with
yeah.
that schedule. And if your offense is average to a little below average and not the worst in the FBS, you're a 10-win team going to the playoff.
Mhm.
You don't even have to make the Big Ten championship. So that's huge for Iowa.
An elite defense.
An
honestly.
elite defense with white cornerbacks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really do think, in my opinion, the conference is a two-horse race between Oregon and Ohio State. Truthfully, I think October 12th is going to determine who gets first, who gets second in the Big Ten. I can't envision any of these teams losing outside of that October 12th matchup. Even I know the hype around Oregon, like, oh, how are they going to fit in the Big Ten playing these winter games like at Wisconsin or whatnot. I think Oregon and Dan Lanning built such a physical front seven and such a physical offensive line to compete with those types of programs that I think they'll be fine. And then Ohio State, naturally, like, yeah, Will Howard has some questions around him. Is he going to be good as Common Core? I don't know. But that team is so deep, especially at running back, receiver, and they have such a good defense that he doesn't need to be the guy. He can be like J.J. McCarthy at Michigan last year, just kind of like a game manager and make a couple plays when you have to. I think that's the kind of guy he's going to be. And I think that's the kind of guy they only really need. They don't need a guy who's going to be like Caleb Williams or be like Justin Fields or a guy like that. Yeah, it would help, but like they don't need something like that with that roster. So for underrated teams, I was going to choose Iowa. But I do like I don't know if Penn State's underrated per se, but I really do like Penn State as well. I think this is the year for them to get to the playoffs for the first time, especially with the expansion. Drew Aller's only going to get better. The Penn State defense is really good. I think Penn State could be a probably the third best team, in my opinion, in the Big Ten.
I think I might like them more than Oregon.
Really?
Ooh,
Really?
And
take.
and the reason is you just look at like what Franklin's done there. You look at, like you were saying, Aller being a seasoned vet at this point at Penn State. I think you look at some of his numbers, and I think his interceptions are low, but that can sometimes be a little misleading with being too conservative, maybe. In Oregon, I mean, by all means, Dylan Gabriel, Tez Johnson, I mean, they are probably going to tear it up, but I think the defense, some of the returning guys for Penn State, that could really come into play late in the season. I'd have to look at the exact schedule too, but you get Oregon in some of these Big Ten games late in the season, especially if they're traveling, could definitely come back to bite them in the ass. Penn State, I would actually say, if Penn State doesn't go 11-1, like I think they lose to Ohio State, I think that would be a very unsuccessful season.
They got a tough first week against the Mountaineers and in Morgantown. I don't know. That to me seems really tough.
And even going October 12th, again, best in college football at USC. We don't know what USC will be. I think they'll be the same team as last year, 7-5. But it's still going cross country, hostile environment. USC's first Big Ten game, I think, that they're going to host. I think that's going to be a raucous environment and a big test for Penn State as well.
Yeah, I actually think USC's. I'd probably put them as like a bit overrated, probably leaning more towards overrated just because of namesake, tradition, like prestige overall coming into the Big Ten. I know they named their quarterback Miller Moss. They got some really good, speedy wideouts, but I think the big question is going to be like, how are they going to hang defensively? And then also, you go from Pac-12 football to Big Ten, right? Smash mouth, ground and pound. lot bigger battles going on in between the trenches there. Can they hang? So I would actually predict them to lose a few more games than I think a lot of other analysts have them going there. Would not be putting a lot of money behind them at all.
Completely agree.
I just want it to be where the Ohio State Buckeyes get in a spot where they could play Ole Miss. I know that would be not the greatest opponent for Ole Miss to win because it'll be a very tough matchup. But just for my personal, like, I'd feel for that. I've always wanted that just anytime. But yeah, that's all.
Question for you guys outside of Oregon with the new incoming former Pac-12 to the Big Ten members outside of Oregon. Who do you think is going to have the best season out of UCLA, Washington, or SC?
I
don't think it's Washington. I can tell you that. So in USC, I don't think it's going to stop anybody. So I'm just going to go with UCLA. And I don't know.
I almost think and I know like they've lost everybody. Head coach Penix is gone. Like Washington's really gutted there. I think, and maybe it's my own bias of thinking of USC kind of being overhyped this year, and they might come out and crush it, go 8 wins. But I would almost put my money on Washington out of those three. I think UCLA is in a bad spot right now. So I'll go Washington.
Yeah, honestly, I was going to go with Washington as well. I know they did lose everybody, new head coach, but Jed Fish, he did have a good kind of last season at Arizona. So bringing that momentum to Washington, I mean, like Bo said, I don't know, SC, they're probably good enough to be that better team, but I don't know. I think Washington had such momentum from last year that and NIL probably was such a big player and seeing the success that, if you have money and you put gas to this fire, it gets bigger. So hopefully, like most, if you see success and results, then it'll work. So we'll see.
Yeah. Washington, I completely agree with you guys. Jed Fish, great coach, good program builder at Arizona. Add Will Rogers, too, experienced guy. It's big. But I'm going to zag. I'm going to go with SC. I know it's a tough schedule, especially in the non-conference where you're matching up against LSU week 1, Notre Dame at the end of the season. So I'm not going to really count those there towards the Big Ten. But looking at their schedule, they go to Ann Arbor and Michigan, game 1 of the Big Ten slate, home against Penn State, at Washington, go East Coast against Maryland. The good thing with SC's schedule, they don't go east of the Mississippi after October 12th. All of their away games are before it gets real cold in Big Ten country, like at Michigan, at Minnesota. You can call Maryland cold, whatever. But all of that is in the early onset of the season, so they won't have to compete with all that weather and stuff like that. But yeah, again, how's the defense going to do? I know they grabbed the former defensive coordinator at UCLA, who had UCLA's defense, had a very good defense at UCLA last year, so hopefully that can translate. Have they got enough recruiting in from the transfer portal and high school kids to compete at a Big Ten level? No, but I think he could patch it up enough to where they could probably win 7, 8 games this year and probably be the best. I don't think UCLA is going to be all that, and I do. I think Washington's a 6-6, 7-5 teams tops, just because it's a huge rebuilding year.
Mm-hmm.
Is the biggest question mark right now in the Big Ten for team potential? Do you think it really centers around Michigan and Alex Orji and what he's going to be asked to do?
Yeah. I think, kind of like Coleman said, they just need a game manager, somebody who'll be able to make a few plays necessary. I don't know if he's going to be McCarthy. And go ahead, Coleman.
No, I was going to say, I think they need more than a game manager this year. Yeah, you have Donovan Edwards, and you still have a good offensive line like your Michigan. You're always going to have those guys. But your team's not as good as last year. You're not going to be able to hand the ball off 65 times like you did to beat Penn State or like you did to beat Ohio State. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. He's going to actually have to go out and make some plays. And who knows what they'll look like. I don't think they'll be all that, but I think a lot of it's going to fall on his shoulders this year.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, I guess you could say the same for like a lot of pressure on Drew Aller. I feel like we kind of know who he is though. Whereas Orji coming in seems to be like he'll take the team as far as he can carry him, I think. I hope they kind of ask him to do a bit more and they open it up a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, Harbaugh's gone. Maybe they kind of rework some of the things, but to your point, Coleman, they'll probably just ground and pound.
But I think the quarterback you should be looking at is Luke's guy, Cade McNamara from Iowa. If they can honestly be half decent, they're a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, they just need like 3 or 4 defensive touchdowns a game, and they could score with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the scandal or the all the stuff that's going off the field with Michigan's going to be such like a distraction this year? I know last year it kind of fueled them. There's kind of a chip on the shoulder, billboard material, chalkboard material, whatever. Do you think that plays a role this time?
Yeah, I think it'd be distracting a little bit, especially for some of the new guys who are on the team, like for all the freshmen coming in that weren't even involved with it. Like now they have the spotlight of like, oh, you play for cheaters. Let's say if it comes out like that more, it's tainting Michigan's reputation. Just even having this in the pub or PR, so they kind of have to put up with that. I don't think it's gonna be as big of a chip on their shoulder because like all the guys who were initially there are now in the pros or have graduated.
I do think that's going to be crazy. Their first game, didn't they have Harbaugh? Isn't he going to be honorary captain for the game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That
I think he's not going there anymore. I think he just said, "I'm going to do what's best." I think his parents are going in front of him, stand in for him. You'll have to check that. People on the internet here, but
Yeah.
that's what I.
that place would have gone nuts.
Yeah, it would have been nuts. Maybe they bring Stallions back, let him do it.
Now that's an idea.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to bring up one more team. Of course, we can go through others, but obviously, repping home state, Wisconsin Badgers here, kind of combing through their schedule, their predictions. They have a transfer quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke. Yeah, I mean, you watch Miami last year and you're like, I'm not extremely thrilled. Bo, I don't know if you have a different opinion, but I'm not. I'm not
I'm right.
excited.
No, I think they fade the Badgers right now. I
Yeah.
think,
All agrees.
yeah, dude, I completely agree. How do you think they're going to get any better after losing Braylon Allen? Put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
They do not have any favorable games. Actually, they play Alabama week
thank
3.
you. Yeah, so when they get the SEC treatment week 3, the morale is going to take a huge hit. It's going to be like Mike Tyson walked in that stadium for the left hook. It's just going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot for him.
And I think out of all this too, I know I mentioned this like probably a month ago or so, but you look at who's running the offense. You have Phil Longo. We're very familiar with what he's done when he was at Ole Miss. When he was at North Carolina, had a lot of great success, right? I'm not a fan. I don't really think it fits. I mean, the Badgers, they're transforming their offense, right? They're passing more. I just really hate some of the schemes he runs, how inefficient a lot of his red zone packages can be. And we'll see how they are. I think we'll really have to see if the offensive line play steps up for the Badgers this year. And I don't know. I mean, I've talked with quite a few people where, of course, they're big Badger fans and they're not worried about Fickle at all. And they're like, you got to give him a few years. I don't know. I mean, you start having a bad season, you only win 4 or 5 games this year.
Hot seat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I know it's kind of the world we live in with college football, with everybody has a very short leash, and coaches and all, for the benefit of the doubt, probably should get more time, but a lot of programs aren't that patient at all. So if you're circling one game and you're, like Bo was saying, if you're going to really fade the Badgers, Northwestern, I think every few years they creep up on them. I would take Northwestern.
Without a field, Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they playing? Because I know
Wrigley.
they put, yeah, they
Wrigley.
are. Oh,
And a
man. It's
half
actually
Wrigley, half like a local fucking park.
Half the parking lot. Right.
No, legitimately, I think it's not a local park, but it looks like a high school stadium.
It's electric. Oh, we're playing Northwestern today on sand. Awesome. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say fade the Badgers. I love Wisconsin. I think my hot take is Fickle's on the hot seat. This has been not good. I mean, they went with Paul Chris. They got rid of him. Paul Chris was almost a lock every year to win at least 8 games. We'll just say 8, 9 games every year. You know what the Badgers were going to do? Run between the tackles. And shout out Joel Stave, no free shout outs. But, we knew what we were doing when he was QB. We weren't trying to air raid offense. We were just turning it around, going left, going right. And now we're trying to do air raid in the Big Ten. And I think Phil's about to get shown up by all the West Coast teams that truly do air raid this year. I think they're going to get absolutely torched.
Well, and one last point, Coleman, before you go. I don't remember the exact stat, but it is remarkable to see if they had this expanded playoff the past however many years, how many of those years the Badgers would have actually potentially made it into. But what were you going to say, Coleman?
I know we're all SEC guys and went to Ole Miss, went to an SEC school, and have that little bit of bias. But from a national perspective, from two guys who have supported the Badgers and support Big Ten football, the middle of the Big Ten, how important is it for the middle tier teams of the Big Ten to have a huge season in order for the national media to not say the Big Ten is a top heavy conference? Because going forward, it's the Big Ten and the SEC going forward. Everybody knows how deep the SEC is with every single team barring Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas and a few others this year. It's a very deep conference. The Big Ten, you have Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. Outside of that, outside of those four core teams, there are a ton of question marks around who's going to be the fifth team. Who's going to be those middle tier games that could potentially upset one of the top five teams? What does that look like for you guys of how important of a year is it for the middle tier teams in the Big Ten to actually showcase that, hey, we're a deep conference. We're worthy of becoming the best conference in football?
Yeah, I mean, the Big Ten fan that I grew up with, who I was until I started watching SEC football essentially. I want the Big Ten to have that good, solid middle, where if Nebraska could get really good, I mean, that's a great program.
Illinois, Maryland, Indiana,
Yep.
Purdue, Michigan State.
Yeah. I would love to see that. Sadly though, if I'm honestly looking at it, I'm not very hopeful, really. I think it'll continue to be very top heavy. I think Nebraska could be on the rise. Michigan State, they really got to figure things out. Illinois, they do have they have the old Ole Miss guy.
Yeah, who
right?
cares? I'm higher on Michigan State. I think Jonathan Smith from Oregon's actually going to be really good. That team will be much better, I think, this year than in the previous years under Mel Tucker. Well, outside of the playoff year. Or
Michigan State, terrible stadium. Dude, the wall's 4 feet from the sideline. You run a fly route, a fade, you're getting checked into a arena football wall. So that's just my 2 cents on Michigan State.
What do you think about the middle though, Bo? Do you think it's I mean, like I was saying, I feel like it'd be great, but I just don't see that being a strong, those programs getting strong anytime soon.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, you have to be the top quarter because I don't think the middle teams will be able to compete with anybody in the SEC truly. If Auburn goes, I don't know, 6 wins, and then you take the Badgers who are at 6 wins and they were to play an insert no name game, Auburn probably roll them just straight up. But I think it's a huge year for the Big Ten teams because being the first year with the expansion, it's going to kind of set the tone for new recruits to look at okay, this team finished top half, this team finished bottom half. I'm here in 2 years. Where do I want to be? And now that with the expansion teams, we're also recruiting against the West Coast. Oh, these teams are the same conference. So I think it's a huge year for all the middle of the road teams to try to get a leg up on each other. Because if it stays top heavy, then we're just going to talk about the same 4 teams and maybe until somebody else gets fired and a new head coach comes in to make some excitement, it's just going to be those teams.
And do you think anybody's more excited for the expanded playoff than Penn State?
If they don't get in, season failure, you don't fire James Franklin, but you do an internal look evaluation of yourself as a program.
Yeah.
He's go ahead,
I was just going to say, I think the Big Ten, the comp to this is F1. There's 3 good teams, and then there's all the other ones are just fighting to get money in the top 10 or whatever places. In here it's you have 4 or 5 good teams, and then the others are just kind of fighting themselves, I guess. I don't know. It's just kind of crazy.
I think the middle tier this year is going to be a little bit better than years past. I think teams like USC could break through that ceiling and win 8 games. I think if you look at, I think Michigan State, not so much this year, but I think they'll have a better season than they did last year. I'm looking at teams like Rutgers and Maryland. I think those could be 7-win teams, potential 8 if a ball goes their way. So I think it's going to be a little bit better. I don't think it's going to be like towards the SEC middle tier, but I think it's going to be a little bit better than we think.
8 wins as Rutgers is an absurd statement, just so you know. And I love you. But dude, 8 wins? 8
They have a
wins?
good team this year, I think.
This isn't
Shiano's
the
got them
NFL.
going.
This isn't 17 weeks, Scott, man. This is college. 8
I
wins?
know.
Hey, I could be completely wrong. I'm just saying Rutgers 8 wins sounds like I'm betting the under. That's just what it sounds like.
Let's look at their schedule here. So they have Howard Bison, never heard of him.
1 win.
That's 1 win. You got Akron Zips, that should be a win. Virginia Tech, they got a lot of buzz, so probably a loss there.
Okay.
Washington, loss.
No. Washington going East Coast, literally the farthest trip.
Oh, that's true. That's the advantage they have.
Okay, there's Coleman getting to 8 because we're at 3-1.
At Nebraska,
Loss.
Toss up.
that might be a toss-up game. Wisconsin,
Loss.
UCLA,
Win.
at USC. They have to go
Loss.
West Coast. Yeah, that's definitely a loss.
4-4, correct. 4-4.
Yeah. Minnesota,
Win.
at Maryland,
They beat them every other year.
and then the last 2, Illinois, and then at Michigan State.
Coleman, I stand corrected. That's 8.
That could be 7. Could
Stand
be
corrected.
6. So you never know. But I think
Dude,
it is in the realistic cards for Rutgers.
Dude, we just dropped another $10,000 for Rutgers over 8 wins. So, yeah, there you go, everybody.
What
Smile.
is? I'm checking the odds for Rutgers over under.
I say 6.5.
I've been betting my preseason over unders. I have not checked Rutgers.
Everybody guess before Coleman says it. I say 6.5.
7.5.
Well, we'll go 5.5. What the heck?
6.5, both correct.
That's
Vegas is literally predicting Rutgers to be a bowl team and potentially get 7 wins. And it's up. There's no juice either way. So
Coleman Young, insider college football expert.
I like Rutgers. They did lose their starting middle linebacker today. I did see that.
Yeah, not good.
But should we jump to the SEC?
Absolutely, because it means more.
Well, actually, take that back. What's your conference championship prediction and who's your winner?
I think it's Ohio State, Oregon, honestly. And then Ohio State winning.
Yep. I agree. Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State wins.
And if I were to choose another opponent that plays Ohio State, it's probably Penn State. But I don't see that being a likely opponent.
I'm going to go Ohio State, Penn State. I think Penn State comes out winner. I think this is their year.
Big defense. Big defensive game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oregon. That's my hot take. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to light it up.
All right. Love it. It just means more.
Is that what you thought? You agree with the Ohio State, Oregon?
Yes. Ohio State, Oregon. Lock it in.
Love
Great.
it.
Just great.
All right. Let's move to the SEC. It just means more, like both said.
Just means more. Hey, side note, we got to talk about the third or fourth best conference of people who are gaming the system. Clemson. Dude, these guys are playing nobodies. Imagine Clemson. They could probably be an expansion team into the Big Ten or SEC eventually, just my 2 cents. And I just think they're kind of gaming the system being where they're at because the competition's not as hard as those 2 conferences. Just by 2 cents. Just by 2 cents.
I read low in the ACC on this podcast.
Yeah.
Are we anti-ACC podcast?
After Florida State got blown out 67-0, yeah, I'm low on the ACC.
Oh, Florida State didn't play with anyone. Everyone dropped out of that game.
Hey, just letting you know my 2 cents. Anywho, we'll go to just means more. I didn't mean to segue that.
No. It starts with a good question. Are we anti-ACC on this podcast? Anti-ACC football. We won't say basketball. Different story.
Sure.
I like NC State.
Yeah.
NC State with McCall and Yeah, I'm blanking on the running back's name, but I actually liked him this year.
I like Virginia Tech. I like the Ville. Syracuse could run the table.
Court at
Keeping
QB.
time on court. Yeah.
Syracuse has a dog shit schedule.
I This is different than
My
ACC.
oh my oh how are you forgetting this? Miami. For Christ's sake, Miami could literally be one of the best teams in the country.
Yep. Miami needs to go to the SEC.
All right, carry on.
All
SEC
right.
just
It just means more. Let's go. Who do you think's running the table? We'll start it off with Jake. Take it away. Who are your top four in the SEC and why?
What I'll do is I'll give you like who I think. I mean, Georgia, obviously, everybody loves them. I think Bama with DeBoer going to be. I mean, he's got a lot of pressure. Ole Miss, to my bias, I think like this is their best shot at
This
winning
is
it.
going to be the most I'm sorry to interrupt. This is going to be the most biased fucking segment we'll do in the history of the Fifth Quarter Collective. Mark this down, episode 12, Ultimate Bias episode.
It's fine. It's okay.
Removing my fandom from the analysis. I clearly see that Ole Miss is going to win the national championship and the SEC. But no, in all seriousness, I think you just look at the team. You have Dart coming
Yep.
back. Trey Harris, I think quite possibly could be the best wide receiver. And you hear Lane Kiffin and the team saying that even though he was amazing last year, he still might be most improved, which everybody should be very scared about. They get Juice Wells from South Carolina. I mean, super deep at wide receiver. The biggest difference that Lane was talking about, and no, it's not about him ripping on Coke and the amount of sugar that you get in your daily intake for that. The biggest difference when he was talking about the team is O-line, D-line. And you rewind to what Georgia and Bama have done to them the past few years. Didn't look like they should have hung with them at all. Like it kind of looked like we were a Pac-12 defense by all means. And so you look at who we got with Nolan, with many of these other transfer portal people and poaching them. I think you have to be excited. This is their year. I don't think we're going to have a better shot than this. And so to wrap that up, I'm stamping Ole Miss. But of course, they got to get over the big humps of Georgia. So we'll see.
Coleman, your thoughts?
I think it's a very, very deep top of the leaderboard. It's honestly hard to predict two teams that you'd put in the title game. I think off the top of my head, there's five teams I'm looking at, and then there's 1A, 5 teams in 1A, 2 teams in 1B. The 5 teams in 1A are bias, Ole Miss. But like Jake said, I truly believe that this could be the year they legitimately have a shot to win the SEC championship and go play in Atlanta
And the Natty. And the
and the
Natty.
national championship. Yeah,
Thank you. Yep.
I think Georgia. I think the schedule is so. This is the toughest schedule that they've had in a long time. They're still going to be up there. They're still the most talented team. They're still the deepest team in the SEC. But the schedule's a bitch for them. I agree with Alabama. They're going to lose a little bit of a step with Kalen DeBoer, but it's not going to be a lot. I like Mizzou. They have an easy schedule as well as Texas. I know the newcomer, one of the two newcomers to the conference. I think they're primed to have a really good season. They also have an easier schedule as well. Same as the likes of Ole Miss and Mizzou. So I think if they run the table or at least go 11-1 and lose one conference game, they're also going to Atlanta. So that's my 1A tier. I think 1B, I think you have to look at Tennessee and what they can do with Nico. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. Is he a little young? Is he ready for the moment? After one start last year in the bowl game, I don't know. But they're going to prime to be a really good team. And I know Vegas is super high on LSU. And not just to run through all the teams because I didn't mean to. But I'm not high on LSU as much as Vegas or the betting public is. I don't really trust Nussmeier. I don't know how that defense is going to hold up like last year. I know they reloaded that staff. But do you have enough time to reload those players? They'll be there. They'll be a dangerous team. They'll knock some of the bigger teams off, but I don't think they're going to be all that.
I mean, so not going to be like reinventing the wheel here, but yeah, I mean Georgia. I think Carson Beck. I think he's projected potentially to go 1-1 in the NFL draft, and you have a good quarterback. Obviously, you're going to have a chance in the ball games. Them being up there, Ole Miss. I mean, for the first time in a long time, uh, you know, I think they're going to be good, and they can back it up. That really, there's no bias there. I think and it's, Texas was one of those teams that I think could have been up, and they might still be up there. But I know they've had a lot of injuries in practice and stuff like that, and I
Yeah,
know
they
that
lost
could
their
have,
two running backs.
yeah. So I mean, that's a very pivotal part. You can't be a one-dimensional offense. Ole Miss has seen that not working in the past season, so they finally got to a place where they since gotten to a more stable offense. But yeah, Texas, I think they might kind of fall off, but there's still a chance. I mean, they're Texas for goodness sake, and then Alabama. People, people are saying they're going to fall off because Nick Saban left or whatever. But I mean, Kalen DeBoer, he did bring Washington to the semifinal. Or no, he brought them to the final game, the championship game, right? So I think he's and it's still Alabama. Those people are crazy for football, so they're going to throw all the NIL money over there. So I think those are kind of my top four right there.
Rockstar. All great answers. I completely agree with the majority of you. I have Georgia. I actually have Ole Miss as 2, biased, as you like that little thumbs up. I know. I do have Ole Miss at 2. I have Bama at 3 and Texas at 4. Texas with the running back injuries, I think is going to hurt them a lot more than people expect. Bama, I think they're going to be good, but I think they're going to struggle with DeBoer, and it's probably not going to be the same Alabama that Saban had. Put it that way. It's obviously not going to be the same. And then Ole Miss, I feel like we got a lot of momentum behind us, and not only that, but like we've improved a lot over the offseason with the O line, D line. Got 2 guys from Washington that transferred in, I believe, on the O line, and then obviously I think we have one of the best D lines in the country. So pair those two together, and all the additions on for running backs. Like we got LSU's running back Logan Diggs. We got another running back from Henry Parrish came back from Miami, former Ole Miss guy who was there his freshman year, and I think he's back now. And this is just depth. We still got Ulysses Bentley, probably going to lead the way. So we're very versatile. So I think Ole Miss, people are going to be sleeping on, but I think this is probably the best shot to win the Natty, in my opinion, or to at least like really staple themselves as a blue chip school.
In the new college football era.
Do you
Yes.
think?
Expanded playoffs and
Right.
Do you think if Ole Miss goes, their over under win total is 9.5? Do you think if they go under 9.5 wins, the season's an objective failure?
Yes. Yes.
And I knew you guys would say that because I agree. The fact that us as Ole Miss fans, in the first time in our lives, are saying, you know what, 3 losses and 9 wins, that sucks. That just goes to show what Lane has done for the program and where this program is headed in the right trajectory. I know he could leave next year. We'd be nothing. But at least they have the foundation. So I think that's great for the program. I think that's great for Ole Miss. I think it's great for the city of Oxford. I think it's great for everyone. That's all. Question for you guys: a team you didn't mention in the top 4 who could slip in. Who do you like?
Missouri.
Missouri.
I think they're very similar to Ole Miss in the way they've kind of structured their NIL and how much they put in, and they have a lot of good talent. I mean, I think a lot of their talent's coming back from last year, and they beat Ohio State. Ohio State probably was a half an Ohio State team because there was a lot of opt-outs and whatnot, but they still, showed something. So and their schedule too. I don't think their schedule's all that hard. So
Yeah,
they have a chance.
their toughest games at Alabama.
Yeah, that's
Outside of
crazy.
that, they have A&M on the road, second toughest game, and then Oklahoma at home, Auburn at home. At South Carolina is going to be a little bit of a difficult one going in late September or late November, but it's really not probably the easiest schedule for all the top tier SEC teams.
Yeah, I think this wouldn't be my prediction for the SEC championship game, but seeing Missouri in there and potentially Ole Miss in there, since there's no divisions, it's just the top best 2 teams I think this year or going forward. It's a possibility. I'm not saying it'll happen or that's my projection, but that would be kind of hilarious to see Ole Miss and Missouri as opposed to like a Georgia, Texas or anything. Any of these big schools, big brands.
Right.
That'd be a ratings nightmare for ESPN.
Oh,
I think out of the ones I didn't mention, I think Tennessee's interesting with the quarterback. I think I'm probably leaning more towards. I think I'm probably leaning more towards Oklahoma though, with Jackson Arnold and some notorious good defense again that wasn't in the SEC. So some of those numbers should I think drop in terms of like or increase I guess in terms of like points given up and things like that. But I think they have a chance if you just go and look at their schedule. Like I was breaking it down here. Um, very realistically could get to what 9 wins. I think. I mean, if they beat Tennessee, they beat Texas, and then I think if you beat Mizzou or LSU right there, I mean you can make a case that they could squeeze in and surprise you. So I'm gonna go Oklahoma.
Didn't do it. It didn't do it.
It's okay. It's a thought that counts. I think that's a good hot take, but Oklahoma, I don't think can hang after losing Gabriel, in my opinion. And Levy's
They
gone
have
too.
they have a tough end of the schedule. Missouri, Alabama, LSU. Those are the last 3 weeks. That's crazy.
Realistically, I could see this team being a 6-win team.
Hmm.
If Jackson Arnold isn't who we thought he was, this and the defense is good, but not great. This schedule's a monster. You start off Temple, Houston, Tulane. Tulane's good. Houston's all right. Your first SEC game is home against Tennessee, and then you go on the road to Auburn. I think you split. Then you have Texas, which, yes, no matter how good Texas is, you always end up coming out on top, or at least it's a close game, except for 2 years ago when you get the shit beat out of you, 42-3 or whatnot. I'll call that a loss. Home against South Carolina and win. You're at Ole Miss. I think that's a loss. You play Maine, win. Then your final 3 games are at Mizzou, by Alabama, at LSU. I think that's a tough draw for them and a tough schedule, especially if you don't have the quarterback play where you historically have always had. I think it's tough for Oklahoma.
Watch them just turn it completely around, and they're just like
Yeah,
maybe
that
just
could be it
lighting the
too.
world on fire. Yeah.
I could be totally wrong. But from a preseason perspective, that's all I say.
Any other sleepers there?
This may come as a hot take. I really like A.
Oh,
I think Elko was a great hire. I think if Wegman can stay healthy, they could win some games. They have somewhat of a favorable draw. Florida, Arkansas, home against Mizzou, Mississippi State, LSU, and then at Auburn. Then you have Texas at home. I think you could sneak a couple of those ranked wins out and win a few games. I think Texas A&M's a little underrated going into this season.
surprising.
Yeah, I think if you don't have Jimbo and Bobby Petrino at the fucking head of this ship, I think you'll automatically be doing better.
Coming in
The only other call out I want to go through real quick too is just like Florida in the
under.
toughest end of season schedule we've like ever seen when you're finishing with Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. I don't know. What is Napier fired if he doesn't hit a certain win total this year? You think this is the last dance?
Coleman said he kind of sucked at media day, so I think he should be fired now. Like, how do you have no excitement? You are the leader. You got to have like some. You got to make your guys believe they can do something. And according to Coleman, boots on the ground over there, he said this guy just looked defeated, and
Yeah.
you can't rally behind a guy like that.
You know
I
what's
mean-
funny? I'm looking on the Florida Gators website, and their schedule, it shows all the teams and whatever. But the last game, they show the SEC championship, and I'm looking at like other teams too. None of them show that. I wonder if they're just that full of themselves. Like that's pretty, I don't know, interesting.
I think if this team, I think also the disdain of media days is he's getting the same question of your schedule's tough. How are you going to play it? Graham Mertz is returning. Do you think you can do a little bit better than last year? And they start off week 1 against Miami. I think that's the make it or break it game. I know it's week 1, but the expectations surrounding both of these programs of your Florida, you're on the hot seat, and then your Cristobal and Miami, like this is your year. This is what you've built towards. I think that's a monumental game 1. And then you have A&M, UCF, which isn't easy as well. They're going to be come out firing all cylinders too,
Okay.
trying to take it to the big brother up north.
KJ Jefferson.
Yeah. And Gus Malzahn, that's
Wow.
a good team year in, year out. That's well coached. They always have a quarterback. Shout out John Rice Plumlee. This is an episode of shout outs.
Shout out, no free shout out, JRP.
Yeah. Shout out baseball.
Shout out
Um,
JRP against LSU 2019, putting up 44 against eventual Natty champs. That's what
yeah, and
happens.
then like you said, the final five, it's just like, what are we doing? That's unreal. And then you go, mind you, take a trip to Tennessee as well in there. That's just a brutal, brutal draw. But respect for them for scheduling those out of conference games.
They really will probably have like 8 or 9 losses.
Honestly, if they get to 7 wins, is he coach of the year?
Yeah. I just
Uh,
realized this isn't even on me. My bad.
They were 7-5. Is that coach of the year playoff bound?
I think they're
8-4.
bowling. What bowl are they at? The
I
freaking
think honestly,
Gordon
God, if they go
Bowlers?
9-3, I think there's a legitimate shot for them to have a 9-3 college football playoff team with that schedule.
Are you serious? You talking about Florida?
I think if they beat 9 of those teams, there's a conversation to be had.
Tom Brady coming out of retirement? How are they going to beat him?
Well, I think if they do,
Okay,
it,
I'm just hey. Okay,
ten,
I thought you were saying they will. That's why I was very
no, God
concerned.
no, God no.
Okay.
But honestly, would you? Let's say Utah goes 10-2, loses 2 Big 12 games, and you have 9-3 Florida with that schedule and the teams you beat.
Yeah, you got to look at the metrics. It has to be high.
Hurts to laugh, but yeah, that was funny.
10-2 Clemson with a loss to Georgia on their schedule, and their only wins are ACC teams in the eyes of Bo. Loser conference.
Fraud conference.
Yeah, I think there's a realistic conversation to be had.
Yeah, I mean you're not wrong. But the crazy thing is they're probably not winning 9 games. So what
No,
are you
no, I
taking?
don't think that's not happening.
Are you taking the over or under at 4 wins for the year?
Under.
I'm taking the under.
Under.
Yeah, I'll take the under.
I'll take the over just for fun. For the podcast.
For the pod.
And one last thing, I think, and then we can give our championship predictions. Homerism, Ole Miss. What do you think the record is? And if they do lose, who do they lose to?
Let me look.
I'd say feeling good right now. 11-1 going into the playoffs. 1 loss Georgia.
I don't know. I mean, the two games that obviously are the kind of the big ones is Georgia and LSU, in my opinion. We won't know really, honestly. Like, I'm gonna say 10-2, just to be the pessimist in me. I know this is still Ole Miss. We're getting too hyped up at this point in time, so we got to keep ourselves level for. But that crazy to say that 10-2 is a level season. But yeah, losses to LSU and Georgia.
I mean, in my body wants me to say that they're winning 11 games. But
Oh no.
when I'm looking at this, my biggest concern is I think there's a really easy kind of trap game setup here where I think we go down to LSU. I think we beat them. You then the next week, as I said before, I do like Oklahoma. We have Oklahoma at home, and then 2 weeks later, Georgia's coming up. So that week they're probably already looking at a few things. Hopefully they're not looking ahead too much, but that game scares me a bit. So I think if they do lose 2 games, I'm actually thinking Oklahoma beats them and Georgia.
I thought you were going to say Arkansas trap game, which is the ultimate trap game.
It is. It is.
So
But
So the bye week is in between LSU and Oklahoma. So that actually might
Mm,
help us. So I don't know. I mean, Oklahoma
true.
still might be the game that we end up losing, but I mean, bye weeks are definitely going to be useful, especially with the way things look now.
O-
Sure.
Oklahoma's not going to be like what they were. They're going to take a step back, if anything, losing Levy
yep,
and Dylan
thank you, Bo.
Gabriel. What'd you say?
That's all I needed to hear.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Coleman, thank you. We're on the same page. They're just a fraud program. I'm just telling you, you lose one of the best offensive minds in the league, and you lose the starting QB, who are bread and butter. Now Mississippi State's going to have Levy, and they actually might be okay on offense, but I think we should handle them. and the egg bowl's back in Oxford this year, which is good. Second off, it's like Oklahoma's going to be fine. They got Venables as the head coach, I believe, and I know they got some touted 5-star probably at QB, but you lost one of the best OCs, which I think it's way more about the coaches trying to get the players in the right positions. That's my 2 cents. That's why I think we're going to be okay.
I think it's 10-2. Not to talk NBA. Schedule loss at LSU. 2 reasons. LSU's coming off a bye. Ole Miss plays 7 straight games, with LSU being the 7th game in a row. And the week before that, you take a trip to Columbia, South Carolina, which, again, they're not a great team. It's always, always, always a tough place to play. And then you turn that around and you travel to Baton Rouge at night. Schedule loss. And you have your bye. You beat Oklahoma. Trap game at Arkansas. I don't know. I think I want them to win the game so bad against Georgia. And it would just every single preseason fruition of like, hey, we're building this team to beat the Georgias and Alabamas of the world. You have it at home. I don't know. I'm just erring on the side of caution, 10-2. So now we've gotten to it. Championship predictions, and we'll call it.
There we go.
Bam. That's how Ole Miss is going to look after the championship, baby. Yep. Daddy champs. Let's throw that out there. Another 10 grand. There we go.
Who are they playing, Bo?
I assume, in all seriousness, I think it's going to be a rematch of us in Georgia. Georgia's going to end up probably like a 1 seed. I see us ended up probably around like 6 or 7. So I'm assuming we're going to be opposite. That's my prediction of Georgia. Then we'll meet them in the Natty. So, yeah. Awesome. Any other hot takes? Any closing remarks?
Objections?
Anybody want to argue right now about this?
That's what I'd be going with.
I like your prediction.
Thank
I
you.
disagree.
Oh yeah.
Orioles is coming in hot. What's up?
I disagree. I think Georgia loses more than I think Georgia loses 2 games this year. It doesn't get there.
Alabama?
Yeah, I think they lose at Bama, and I think they lose at Texas.
Wow.
Coleman Young coming in hot from the top rope. Wow.
I think they're still make the playoff. They, honest God, so could win the national title. I just think the schedule for them is so tough, and some of the road games that they have not played in previous years. And I don't think they're as talented as a team as they were with those national championship teams. I don't know. I think they have 2 losses. I'm gonna go Missouri. I think if they go 11-1 and just lose that 1 game to Alabama, I think they're in. I don't know. I'll probably take Texas. I think they can honestly run the table. You beat Georgia at home. Who else are you going to play? Oklahoma, which you'll most likely 6-6 Oklahoma. Then what? You have Florida, A&M, who you could beat depending on how good they look. Even though I said they're my underrated team. Then you have Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky. I think you run the table there. I think Texas, Missouri. I think it's a Big 12 championship in the SEC.
There we go. I love that.
Stamp of approval.
That's
This really
why
adds to the show. Live animations.
Dude, this is great. It's like we got sponsored by, I don't know, like AI.
Yeah, shout out to the
Twitch.
YouTube audience.
Yeah. It's like we got a Twitch stream going on. We just got all these like pop-ups everywhere.
Yeah, right.
So, good pod, guys. Predictions this weekend. What do we like? Florida State minus 11.
Georgia Tech.
11.5.
Taking Georgia Tech in this one.
Florida State.
Florida State.
Florida State.
I have a fun question.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, go Luke. Go Luke.
No, I just think Haynes King. He's the guy. He's gonna bring the rambling wreck. You know, a great first win in week 0. Set the tone.
You can take a second to think about this. This is a random question we're springing, but I do think it is fitting. I want Heisman predictions. Who's everybody think gonna win?
Carson Beck, probably. I don't know. I feel like it usually just goes to the best team, right? Most of the time. At least, who's it last year?
I think it'll be the last year I picked yours. Obviously not Heisman. Maybe Quinshawn. I think he has a shot to win it at Ohio State. I know I just dogged him earlier in the podcast, but if he can just roll like he did the SEC schools, I mean, he'll have a shot to be in the conversation. But I don't think Milrow will get it because I don't think Bama's going to be as good as they were. So I'll just lock in Ewers.
I'm gonna go. Did everyone give their predictions? Jake,
I'm locking in Cam Ward, Miami.
fuck you. That was my pick. I was gonna wait for everyone to say something, and then I was gonna, shocker. Good money, Cam Ward.
Yeah. I love them. Yeah, I just think you look at Miami, man, they're dangerous.
Yeah, I
Sorry to
agree.
steal your thunder, Coleman.
No, it's fine. I
That
agree.
really upset you.
Cam Ward.
Why are you copying my picks? No, I'm kidding.
Lock it in. Plus 2,000.
Love it. We'll see. We'll have to write some of these down, tweet them out too, so we have this in memory. I'd like to do like a end of season review of what we all thought.
Agree. I would agree.
Are we doing championship predictions, or are we
We'll
championship?
hold off on next week. Do a full pod on that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then I can rant about why the group of five gets a slot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody needs that.
No, we're not an elitist podcast, are we?
Oh, you are.
Anti-group of five. Are we really? Is this really an elitist podcast group?
Do you see that 12 seed beating anybody next year, Coleman?
Ever?
No, because they're matched up in the wrong spot.
We were talking about gross ratings for SEC championships with Ole Miss and Missouri, dude. That's talking. Whoever, what is it, the 5th seed playing the 12th seed?
Well, okay, it doesn't always have to fall in the 12 seed. Yeah, if it's a Liberty every year, yeah, they're gonna get their shit kicked in. But if you have a team like Tulane or like Memphis that can actually finish maybe 10th, 11th, that doesn't have to go up against the team that lost their conference championship, who's probably the second or third best team in the country, yeah, I think there's a legitimate shot for them. As a 12 seed, if it's Liberty, no, we're done.
Or maybe SMU.
They're a Power 5 team now.
Are they?
Yeah,
Right.
if you
They're
pick
in the
Memphis
Big
or
12.
someone like that,
Mustangs.
I think they could win a game. I don't think they're winning the whole thing, but I think you can win a game. I didn't know this
Yeah.
was such an elitist podcast.
It is. We've declared ourselves. We're
I'm fine. I'll declare myself
what is it?
Danny Canal.
LNBA, with WNBA and elitist college football podcast.
Fine. I guess I will be the resident Danny Canal then. I'll fight for the lower guys.
Oh,
Great pod.
Yeah,
With-
shout out Danny Canal.
with that, thank you all for tuning in again. We're all excited for college football.
Yeah, thank you
Doing-
guys.
We'll be doing more and more breakdowns for sure.
Awesome
subscribe.
pod. Shout out that McDonald. Shout out Nicole. Shout out Jace. Shout out his daughter. Shout out Danny Canal. Go O's.
You're not on the Christmas card list next year, then what are we doing?
Yeah, shout out KB. Shout out Blink.
Shout out Johnny Davis. Okay. Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
shout out
Like,
Johnny Davis.
subscribe, and share. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.